Cal Bennett had lived alone on his ranch for many years, long enough that most people in the nearby town no longer tried to visit him. Some said he preferred the quiet, others believed he carried too many memories to welcome company. But the truth was simpler. Cal liked peace. He liked the slow rhythm of the land, the early mornings when the light spread across the hills, and the evenings when the breeze moved gently through the dry grass. Life was plain, steady, and calm, exactly the way he wanted it. Every day he woke before sunrise and walked the same path down to the small corral behind his home. He checked the fence posts, counted the cattle, repaired anything that needed fixing, and then moved on to the larger field beyond the dry wash. The desert stretched wide in all directions, with long shadows, scattered brush, and distant red mountains. Cal had grown used to reading the ground the way other men read newspapers. A bent blade of grass, a missing calf, a faint trail, all of it spoke to him. One warm afternoon, near the start of summer, Cal rode out farther than usual. A few of his cattle had wandered close to the wash, and he wanted to bring them back before they pushed too far. The heat pressed down in gentle waves, and even his horse, Clyde, walked slower than normal. Cal wiped sweat from his forehead and leaned back in the saddle, letting Clyde find his own pace. As they approached the edge of the wash, Clyde suddenly lifted his head. His ears twitched forward. Cal felt the subtle shift and slowed the horse to a stop. Something was out there. Cal could sense it too. He listened. For a long moment, there was only the usual desert sound. The wind brushing through low shrubs, the call of a distant bird, the settling of dust. But then he heard something else, something soft and uneven, the tired breath of another animal. Cal nudged Clyde forward. A few yards ahead, down in the shade of a leaning mesquite tree, stood a horse he did not recognize. Its sides rose and fell with slow, heavy breaths. The saddle looked handmade, and a small woven bag hung from the horn. The horse was not alone. Beside it stood a young woman, tall and quiet, watching Cal with steady eyes. Cal had seen Apache people many times during his years on the ranch, but he had never seen this woman before. She was striking not only because she was taller than most women, but because she stood with a calm strength, like someone who knew her place in the world and had no reason to hide. Her long dark hair was braided down her back, tied at the end with a small piece of red cloth. She wore simple clothing suited for travel, and her skin carried the warm tone of someone who had lived under the sun all her life. For a moment, neither of them moved. Cal felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the pressure that always came when he met someone unexpectedly on his land. But the woman did not look troubled or threatening. Instead, she looked tired, and there was a quiet worry in her expression as she rested her hand gently on her horse's neck. Cal cleared his throat, unsure what to say. She spoke first. "Water?" she asked softly, her voice calm but filled with hope. She pointed to her horse, whose eyes looked dull from the heat. Then she touched her own canteen, which was empty. Cal hesitated only for a heartbeat. Anyone who traveled this land knew how dangerous it was to run out of water. He nodded and pointed back toward a small trough near his fence line. "You can bring him there," he said in a steady voice. "There's plenty." The woman studied him for a moment, as if measuring whether she could trust him. Then she gently tugged on her horse's reins and began leading the animal toward the ranch. Cal turned Clyde around and guided him at a slow walk, making sure the stranger and her tired horse could follow without rush. When they reached the trough, Cal climbed down from his saddle. He pumped the handle of the old well, and clear water splashed into the wooden basin. The woman's horse drank eagerly, its nose dipping deep. The woman let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing. Cal stepped to the side so he wouldn't crowd her. She murmured something in her own language, a soft phrase meant for the horse, full of comfort and affection. Cal didn't understand the words, but the tone made him smile slightly. After a few moments, the woman looked at Cal. Her eyes were dark, observant, and thoughtful. She seemed to choose her next words carefully. "Thank you," she said, her English accented but clear. "You're welcome," Cal replied. He tipped his hat in a small, polite gesture. For a while, Neither of them spoke. The air around them felt warm and still, but not uncomfortable. It was rare for Cal to share space with someone without feeling awkward. He expected to feel uneasy, but he didn't. The woman stood quietly beside her horse, her gaze drifting across the land. She seemed to be studying the open fields, the scattered brush, the small hills rising in the distance. Cal finally broke the silence. "Your horse all right?" She nodded. "Just tired. Long ride." Her voice was smooth, and she spoke with a calm confidence. Cal could tell she was young, though not a child, someone old enough to travel alone, with the steady presence of someone raised to be independent. Cal didn't want to ask too many questions and make her uncomfortable, but he did wonder where she was coming from. People didn't usually travel alone out here unless they had a strong reason. "You need anything else?" he asked gently. She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No. Just water." Cal nodded. They stood together in quiet again. A warm breeze drifted across the yard, carrying the scent of dry earth and sage. Clyde, Cal's horse, nibbled lazily at a patch of grass, completely relaxed. The woman walked a few steps away and looked out toward the distant hills. She stood tall, taller than Cal had expected, and her posture had a natural dignity. The sun cast a soft glow across her face, highlighting her strong features and calm expression. She looked like someone who had spent her entire life outdoors, moving through the world with purpose and grace. After a few minutes, she turned back to him. "You live alone?" she asked simply. Cal nodded. "Yes, been that way for a long time." She studied him again, not with judgment but with curiosity. It was clear she found the idea interesting, maybe even unusual. "Your land is quiet," she said softly. "Peaceful." "That's why I stayed," Cal replied. Something in his voice must have told her more than he intended, because her expression softened. She didn't ask more, but he sensed she understood something about him even without knowing his story. She rested her hand gently on her horse's neck, then looked back at Cal one last time. Her eyes held an emotion he couldn't name. Part gratitude, part thoughtfulness, and part something deeper, like recognition. "I am Taya," she said with a small nod. "Cal Bennett," he replied. Taya gave the slightest smile. Brief but warm. It surprised him how much that tiny smile affected him. It had been a long time since anyone had smiled at him like that naturally, without forced politeness or hidden intentions. After another moment of quiet, she took her horse's reins. "I go now," she said. Cal nodded, though a small part of him wished she would stay just a little longer. He had no reason for the feeling, it was simply a soft, unexpected tug in his chest. Taya led her horse back toward the edge of the wash. Before she mounted, she turned once more and looked at him. There was something thoughtful in her gaze, as if she wanted to remember the moment. Then she lifted herself onto her horse with smooth strength and rode away. Cal watched her until she became a distant figure, moving slowly across the sunlit land. Even after she disappeared behind a cluster of low hills, he stayed still, listening to the quiet her presence had left behind. He didn't know why the encounter stayed with him, but it did. All through the evening, while he worked, he found his mind returning to her calm voice, her tall figure, and the quiet steadiness in her eyes. He tried to push the thoughts away, telling himself it was just a passing traveler he would never see again. But something in his heart told him that their meeting was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. Cal Bennett tried to settle back into his usual routine, but something had changed inside him. He still woke before sunrise, still checked his fences and counted his cattle, still moved through each task with the same calm, steady rhythm. Yet, every day felt a little different, lighter somehow, as if the desert wind carried a new tone, a new quiet energy. And no matter how many chores he finished, a part of his mind drifted to the memory of the tall Apache girl named Taya. He told himself that people passed through the land all the time. Travelers stopped for water, riders crossed the fields, shepherds moved their flocks along the far ridge, but he knew this was not the same. Taya had left an impression that stayed with him long after she disappeared behind the hills. Her calm voice, her thoughtful eyes. The way she stood tall and strong beside her tired horse. None of it was fading from his memory. He didn't expect to see her again. It had been a simple meeting, a moment in time. He believed she had gone back to her people, wherever they had been traveling. And yet, weeks later, on a warm afternoon, while Cal was fixing the wooden slats on his corral, Clyde suddenly lifted his head and turned toward the open land. Cal paused. He recognized that alert look. Someone was near. When he stepped out into the sunlight and scanned the horizon, he noticed a small figure approaching slowly, steadily. She rode with a natural grace, her posture tall and relaxed. When she came close enough, Cal felt something warm rise in his chest. It was Taya. Her horse looked healthier this time, its steps firm and confident. Taya herself looked rested, though a serious expression sat on her face. She stopped a few feet from the fence and dismounted without a word. For a moment, they simply looked at one another. Cal felt awkward, but strangely happy. Taya, as always, was calm. "You came back," he finally said. "Yes," she answered, tying her horse to a post. "Needed help." Her tone was not demanding or troubled, just honest. She reached into a small cloth bag and pulled out a metal tool with a cracked handle. "Can you fix?" she asked. Cal took the tool and inspected it. The handle had split near the base. It wasn't a hard repair, just something that needed a steady hand and a bit of patience. "I can fix it," he said. "Give me a little time." "Give me a little time." Taya nodded and followed him toward the workshop. She didn't look around much. She walked quietly, comfortably, as if she had been there before. Cal felt strangely aware of her presence. Her quiet steps, her steady breath, the soft sound of her braid brushing against her back. Inside the small workshop, he set the tool on the table and gathered what he needed. Taya stood nearby, watching with mild curiosity. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hurry him. She simply waited. Cal liked that. He wasn't used to people who stayed silent without creating uncomfortable tension. With her, the silence felt natural. "You travel far?" he asked casually as he sanded the handle. "A little," she replied. "My band moved to new place. I come back this way." Cal nodded. "Everything going well?" She lifted one shoulder in a small shrug. "Many things to think about." Her tone carried a weight he couldn't quite understand. He felt tempted to ask more, but he didn't want to intrude. Instead, he focused on the repair until the tool looked smooth and strong again. When he handed it back, she accepted it with a small bow of her head. "You fix good," she said with simple gratitude. "Glad to help," Cal replied. Taya walked outside and looked across the open land. Her eyes moved from the distant hills to the quiet corral, then to the soft stretch of desert brush. Something about the way she watched the land made Cal feel as if she carried a map inside her mind, a map of places she had walked, people she had known, and choices she had yet to make. "You live quiet life," she said without turning around. "I like it that way," Cal answered honestly. She finally looked at him. "Sometimes, quiet is heavy." Cal paused, surprised by how true the words felt. For years, he had lived alone, telling himself that quiet meant peace. But sometimes, when the days grew long and the nights stretched even longer, the silence pressed against him like a slow weight. He didn't say that aloud, but Taya seemed to sense his thoughts. "You have memories here," she said softly. He nodded. Yes, she didn't ask about them, and he appreciated that. Instead, she walked toward her horse and checked its reins. "I go now," she said. Something in him tightened again, the same small ache he had felt the first time she left. "You're welcome to stop by any time," he said before he could think twice. Taya paused and studied him. A soft smile formed, not big, not bright, but meaningful. "Maybe I will," she said. And she did. Over the next several weeks, Taya returned again and again. Sometimes, she came to trade, offering woven baskets or herbs in exchange for simple metal parts or small household items. Sometimes she asked for help with tools she needed on her travels, and sometimes she didn't bring anything at all. She simply came to sit for a while, to rest, to watch the sky with him, in companionable silence. Cal found himself looking forward to her visits more than he expected. He didn't admit it to himself at first, but he felt a gentle warmth grow each time he saw her riding toward the ranch. Taya never stayed long, but her presence lingered in the air long after she left. They talked more as the days passed, not about anything heavy or painful, but about simple things. The weather, the land, her people's traditions, his work on the ranch. She listened closely when he spoke, as if his words mattered, and he listened to her with quiet admiration, drawn to her steady wisdom. One afternoon, as they sat near the corral, Taya shared something she had been carrying quietly. "My family wants me to join another band," she said softly. "To start a new life. They think it is good for me." Cal looked at her. "Do you want that?" Taya hesitated. The wind brushed through her braid. "I don't know," she admitted. "Their way is good, but I still want to see more before I decide." Cal felt a strange mixture of concern and understanding. He knew what it meant to feel uncertain about the path ahead. He also recognized the strength it took to admit such uncertainty. "You'll make the right choice," he said gently. "You seem like someone who listens to her heart." Taya gave him a thoughtful look, as if she were studying the honesty in his voice. "Maybe," she murmured. Their peaceful conversations continued over the weeks. But Cal soon noticed something changing. Whenever Taya visited, she looked over her shoulder more often, her eyes cautious, and sometimes, when she heard distant riders passing, her posture stiffened with quiet worry. Cal didn't ask at first, but the worry grew inside him. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, he finally asked, "Is something wrong?" Taya took a long breath. "Some settlers do not like when my people walk near their land," she said calmly. "They think we will cause trouble. But we do not want trouble." Cal felt a slow ache of understanding. He had heard people in town spread unnecessary fear many times. Sometimes rumors grew faster than truth. "And you?" he asked softly. "Do they bother you?" "Not yet," she said. "But they watch. They wonder why I come here." Cal felt a stir of protectiveness, not the kind that involved conflict, but the kind that came from caring deeply about someone's safety and peace. "You're always welcome here," he said firmly. "And no one has any reason to question that." She looked at him with a softness he had not seen before. Something unspoken passed between them, something gentle, warm, and quietly powerful. "Thank you, Cal," she whispered. As the days continued, a sense of closeness grew between them. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It felt natural, like two pieces of land slowly meeting at the edge of a horizon. Cal didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing with certainty. He wanted Taya to keep coming back. And Taya, though she didn't say it aloud, wanted the same. Cal Bennett had grown used to Taya's calm presence on the ranch. By now, it felt natural to look up from his chores and see her approaching on her horse, her braid moving softly in the wind, her tall figure steady as always. Even Clyde, Cal's horse, seemed to recognize her steps from far off, and would lift his head as if greeting an old friend. But as the warm season deepened, something in Taya's visits began to change. Cal noticed small details at first: how she looked toward the horizon before dismounting, how she listened more closely to faraway sounds, how she paused longer before speaking. She was not afraid. Taya did not show fear easily, but she was thoughtful, watchful, as if carrying a quiet concern she did not want to place on anyone else. One afternoon, she arrived earlier than usual. Cal was repairing a loose rail on the corral fence when he heard the soft sound of hooves. He turned and saw Taya riding gently toward him, but her expression was different. She looked tired, not physically, but in her spirit. Cal set down his hammer. "Everything all right?" Taya didn't answer right away. She tied her horse to the post and stepped closer, her eyes drifting across the open land. "Many things are happening," she said softly. "My family prepares to move." Cal felt his chest tighten a little. He had known this moment might come, but knowing didn't make it easier. "Moving far?" he asked. "Not very far," she replied. "But far enough that I may not pass this way often. Cal looked at the ground, then at her. And how do you feel about that? Taya pressed her lips together, thinking. I am not sure. My mother says it is time for me to join another band. A strong family. They want me to learn their ways. They say it will give me a better future. Cal nodded slowly. It sounded reasonable, practical, even. But something in Taya's tone told him she wasn't fully convinced. Do you believe that? He asked gently. Taya lifted her head. I believe they want what is good. But I still feel there is more I need to understand before I choose. Because, etched, Cal respected her honesty. Taya always spoke with care, as if each word needed space to breathe. Before he could say more, Clyde suddenly raised his ears again, alert. Taya's horse stirred too, lifting its head toward the far side of the ranch. Cal followed their gaze. In the distance, a small group of riders approached, not quickly, not in a threatening way, but clearly with purpose. Taya's expression shifted into quiet caution. Her shoulders straightened. Cal stepped slightly in front of her, more from instinct than thought. It's all right, he said softly. Let's see who they are. As the riders came closer, Cal recognized their familiar uniforms. They were part of a local patrol that traveled the territory to check on ranchers and guide travelers. They weren't rough or harsh. They were simply observant men who reported what they saw. Cal had spoken to them before. They always treated him politely, but today, as they slowed their horses near the fence, their eyes moved toward Taya with clear curiosity. Not unkind, just curious. The leader, a middle-aged man with a calm face, tipped his hat. Afternoon, Bennett, he said. We saw someone riding this way and wanted to check in. Everything all right here? Everything's fine, Cal replied in a steady, friendly tone. Just working on the fence. The man nodded, then looked at Taya again. Ma'am, he said politely. Didn't mean to startle you. Taya offered a small nod. It is all right. Taya offered a small nod. Cal noticed how her posture stayed calm, even though she clearly didn't enjoy the attention. She wasn't hiding, just standing respectfully, giving them space. One of the younger riders leaned slightly forward in his saddle. We've seen more folks traveling through the area lately, he said. Just making sure everyone is safe. Cal smiled lightly. We're all safe here. The leader observed the two of them for a moment, then seemed satisfied. Good to hear. If you need anything, Bennett, you know where to find us. Appreciate it, Cal responded. The riders tipped their hats again, turned their horses, and continued on their way at a relaxed pace. The whole exchange was peaceful, simple, and respectful, ending without tension. But Taya remained quiet long after they rode out of sight. Cal stepped beside her. You all right? She nodded slowly. Yes. They were kind. They were, Cal agreed. They're just doing their job. Taya looked at him with gentle honesty. People sometimes wonder why I come here, she said softly. And they wonder why you allow it. Cal blinked. Why wouldn't I? She took a breath. Some people think those from different worlds should not be close. They worry about things that may never happen. They create fears in their hearts. Her words were simple but carried deep meaning. Cal felt something warm and protective stir inside him, not protective in a harmful way, not the kind that created conflict, but the kind that wanted peace and understanding for someone he cared about. I don't worry about that, he said quietly. You're welcome here, always. Taya looked into his eyes, searching them with quiet gratitude. You speak with a clear heart, she said. Cal felt a soft warmth spread through him. So do you. The sun was starting to sink behind the hills, painting the sky with soft pink and gold tones. Taya walked toward the corral's edge and rested her hands on the top rail. Cal joined her. They stood side by side in the fading light. She spoke again in a quieter voice, almost as if thinking aloud. My people respect your calm. They know you live gently. They know you do not judge. Over. I try not to, Cal replied. Life's easier that way. Taya looked down at her hands. There is something else I need to tell you. Cal felt his heart pick up a little, though he didn't show it. Go ahead. She took a slow breath. My band leaves in a few days. They want me to go with them. And they want me to choose my future before we leave. Cal swallowed. You mean, choose where you want to belong? Yes. A soft silence settled between them. The only sound was the gentle rustle of the wind. Then Taya turned to him fully, watching him with eyes that held more emotion than he had ever seen from her. She stepped closer, not touching, but near enough for Cal to feel her presence like a soft warmth. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Are you going to be with me? The question moved through the air like a gentle wave, simple yet filled with meaning. Not a proposal in the usual sense, not a demand or an expectation. It was a question from the heart, pure, honest, and open. Cal felt something shift inside him, something he had tried to ignore for weeks. He saw the truth in her eyes. She respected him, trusted him, and wanted him in her life. But she also respected his freedom. She asked because she wanted to know if he felt the same. He didn't answer right away, not because he was unsure, but because the moment was too important for rushed words. He looked out at the land, the ranch he had built with his own hands, the home that held his memories, the life he knew better than anything else. Leaving it, even partly, felt overwhelming to imagine. But then he looked at Taya, the woman who had brought warmth back into his quiet days, the friend who understood silence better than anyone, the soul who saw him, truly saw him. Without needing long explanations, he realized, slowly and deeply, that the quiet he once embraced now felt different. It wasn't enough anymore. Taya watched him patiently, her expression gentle. She did not push him for an answer. She simply waited, trusting him to speak when he was ready. Cal finally met her gaze. Taya, he said softly, I need time to think. She nodded, understanding completely. I know. I want to make the right choice, he added, for both of us. I want that also, she replied. Their eyes held for a long, peaceful moment. No pressure. No fear. Just two hearts, quietly learning how much they meant to one another. Cal walked her to her horse. She touched his arm lightly, a brief, warm gesture, and said, I will come back tomorrow. And with that, she climbed onto her horse, her posture tall, her presence steady as always. Cal watched her ride away, the sunset glowing behind her, painting her silhouette in gold. When she disappeared beyond the ridge, Cal stood alone in the quiet evening air. He felt the weight of her question resting gently inside him. Are you going to be with me? It echoed not in a heavy way, but softly like a question that could shape the rest of his life. And for the first time in many years, Cal felt his heart beginning to open to a new future. One he had never expected, but now could not imagine losing. The morning sun stretched across the horizon, painting the hills in soft shades of gold and pink. Cal Bennett woke earlier than usual, though he did not need to. Something inside him kept him alert, as if the land itself had whispered that today would be different. He moved through his usual routine with careful attention, checking the fences, counting the cattle, and making sure the tools and equipment were in order. Yet, his mind returned again and again to the thought of Taya. She had asked him a question the night before that stayed with him. Are you going to be with me? The question had been simple, but it carried more weight than any he had faced before. Not in a way that demanded an answer, but in a way that asked him to think deeply about what he truly wanted. He had spent the night considering it, imagining the possibilities and the paths it could open. By the time the sun rose higher, Cal was in no hurry to finish his work. He wanted to see her. He wanted to know if she had already left, or if she might come by as she had promised. His heart beat with a mix of anticipation and calm determination. And then he heard the familiar sound, the soft rhythm of hooves crossing the dry grass. Cal looked up. There she was, Taya approaching on her horse. Her braids swayed gently with her movement, and her posture was upright and confident, as always. Her eyes met his across the distance, and she offered a small, knowing smile. Cal felt a warmth rise in his chest. He waved her over, and she guided her horse to the corral, tying it carefully to a post. The morning air was crisp, but it carried the scent of summer, dry earth, warm grass, and the soft aroma of sage. It seemed as if the land itself welcomed her return. "I'm glad you came," Cal said, walking toward her. Taya nodded, her eyes scanning the ranch with quiet admiration. "I promised," she said softly. "And I like seeing your land in the morning. It is peaceful." Cal smiled. "It is." They walked together to the edge of the corral, where the sunlight made the dust sparkle like tiny stars. They did not speak at first, letting the morning stretch between them, filled with quiet understanding. Even in silence, they were connected, two people who had shared weeks of small moments, conversations, and glances that spoke more than words ever could. Taya finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "The band is ready to move today. I will go with them soon." Cal felt a small ache in his chest, though he did not show it. He had anticipated this moment, but the reality of it still struck him. "And you are ready?" he asked gently. "I think so," she said, looking out at the hills in the distance. "I am ready to see what comes next, to learn and to live fully. But," she turned to him, her eyes locking with his, "I want you to come too." Cal paused. The moment hung in the air between them, filled with the weight of her trust, her hope, and the quiet courage she always carried. He took a deep breath, feeling the desert wind brush across his face, and looked into her eyes. "I want to," he said finally, "more than I have wanted anything in a long time. But leaving my home, even for a short while, is not easy." Taya smiled gently, understanding the truth in his words. "I do not ask you to decide lightly. I only ask you to follow what feels right in your heart." For a long time, they stood together, silent, letting the morning stretch and the breeze pass over them. Cal thought of the years he had spent alone on this land. The quiet days, the slow rhythm of work, the solitude that had once felt so comforting. And then he thought of Taya. Her calm presence, her gentle strength, her honesty, and the quiet way she had entered his life, filling it with warmth he did not know he had been missing. The decision did not come immediately, but when it did, it felt clear. Cal nodded slowly. "I will go with you," he said, his voice soft but certain. "For at least the first part of your journey. I want to see where life takes us." Taya's eyes brightened, not with excitement, but with a quiet relief and understanding. She nodded, a small smile forming. "Thank you, Cal. That means more than words can say." They spent the next hour preparing. Cal packed only what he needed, some clothes, tools, and a few small items he could carry. Taya made sure her horse was ready and well fed. There was no rush, no sense of pressure, only the calm rhythm of two people preparing to move forward together. When they finally set out, the land felt new to Cal. The familiar hills and valleys now held a sense of possibility, rather than routine. He walked beside Taya's horse, holding its reins gently, while she rode with the quiet confidence he had come to admire. Clyde followed closely, aware of the unusual journey. As they moved through the desert, the sunlight shifted, casting long shadows and creating a sense of magic in the ordinary world. Cal noticed small things he had never appreciated before. The way the wind moved through the grass, the soft hum of birds hidden in the brush, the way the hills seemed to rise and fall like gentle waves. Taya spoke occasionally, pointing out landmarks, sharing small stories of her travels, or explaining things about her people's way of life. Cal listened closely. He asked questions, not out of curiosity alone, but because he wanted to understand her world better. And Taya answered patiently, always with respect for his perspective. They stopped at a small hill where the sun was highest. Cal leaned against a rock, while Taya let her horse rest nearby. They ate a simple breakfast of bread and dried fruit, sharing in a quiet companionship that needed no words to feel complete. "You know," Cal said thoughtfully, "I never imagined leaving my ranch with anyone, especially not for a journey like this." Taya looked at him, her eyes kind. "Life often gives us surprises," she said. "Some are frightening, some are wonderful, but most are worth taking if we choose them." Cal nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He thought of the quiet mornings, the long days of solitude, and the unexpected warmth she had brought into his life. He realized that this journey was not just about leaving the ranch, but about opening his heart to new experiences, new people, and a new way of living. As they continued their walk, Taya spoke of her people's traditions, how they respected the land, how they traveled lightly, and how they supported one another through challenges. Cal found himself fascinated. The world she described was both different and familiar. Different in its customs and ways, familiar in its deep respect for nature and quiet courage. He realized that the desert, which had once felt like a boundary, now seemed like a bridge connecting him to something larger than himself. And Taya was the guide across that bridge, not because she demanded it, but because she offered trust and companionship freely. By mid-afternoon, they reached a small plateau overlooking a wide valley. Cal stopped, taking in the view. The land stretched endlessly, dotted with soft hills, streams hidden by brush, and the warm glow of the late sun. Taya dismounted and stood beside him. She looked out across the valley, then turned to him. "This is only the beginning," she said. "But if we walk together, we can face what comes next with courage." Cal smiled, feeling a quiet certainty. "Yes," he said. Together, the sun began to lower toward the horizon, casting golden light across the valley. They set up a small resting spot for the night, sharing a simple meal and tending to their horses. The air was warm, carrying the soft sounds of distant birds and the gentle movement of the wind. As the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, Cal realized that life could be both simple and extraordinary at the same time. He had once thought solitude was everything he needed. Now he understood that companionship, trust, and shared moments of quiet joy could bring a richness even the wide desert could not provide alone. Taya sat beside him for a long while, her presence comforting and steady. She did not speak. She did not need to. The quiet was enough, full of understanding, respect, and the beginnings of a deep bond. Cal looked up at the sky, then at Taya. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked softly. "For trusting me," he said. "For letting me walk with you. For showing me that life can still surprise us in good ways." Taya smiled. A small, but radiant smile. "And thank you," she replied. "For listening. For choosing to be here. And for understanding." The night passed quietly. They slept under the stars, the desert cool around them, the wind carrying soft whispers of distant hills. Cal felt a peace he had not known in years, a quiet happiness that came not from routine, but from the choice to be present with someone he trusted and cared for deeply. When morning came, they rose with the sun. Their journey would continue, and the road ahead was unknown, full of new places, challenges, and wonders. But Cal did not fear it anymore. He had Taya beside him, and together they would meet whatever came with patience, courage, and respect for the land and each other. And so, with hearts open and steps steady, they walked forward. Not toward a perfect ending, but toward a life filled with shared moments, understanding, and the quiet promise of new beginnings. It was not a story of grand adventures or heroic feats. It was a story of trust, companionship, and the simple, profound courage of two people choosing to be together and face the world side by side. And for Cal Bennett and Taya, that was enough.